There's a rumor going around that Nintendo is going to be getting into the VR world.
Hot take. So last year, there was an update for the Nintendo Switch, update 3.0.0, and within that update, there was a line of code. This line of code was set VR mode enabled. No one had really made it do a thing until just recently. You can tell I'm a techie tech guy, right?
Yeah.
Made it do a thing. Someone made it do a thing on Twitter, and now the Nintendo Switch, the screen was split in two, and it had kind of a pseudo VR mode. The screen was still black, but it looked like a VR integration in the system. It was cool.
Now, this is very interesting for a number of reasons. For one, let's just roll back a little bit. This isn't the first time that Nintendo has tried to get into VR.
What do you mean, Shane?
There was a system called the Virtual Boy.
What do you mean, Shane?
Yeah, so the Virtual Boy was a very interesting system that was positioned as a virtual reality kind of device where you kind of put it on a desk because it was too big to strap to your head, and you would look at a black and red screen and it would hurt your eyes. But there was a lot of really interesting games that were developed for it. Sadly, the thing didn't work out, and it was considered one of Nintendo's biggest failures. Ever since that point, there's always been rumors that Nintendo was attempting to try and go back into VR. In fact, with the original Revolution reveals, when we were talking about the Nintendo Switch initially, and even the Wii U and the Wii, there was this idea that Nintendo was going to introduce something drastically different, and it was going to be virtual reality.
And they've always kind of played with VR in the past as well. Well, maybe VR isn't the term I should be using specifically. 3D has been a thing with Nintendo for a long time as well, because we had heard the rumors, I guess, that were confirmed that Luigi's Mansion, you could put a screen on your television screen that would produce a 3D effect. They brought some of that sort of technology into the Nintendo 3DS. This has always been kind of a thing for Nintendo. It was like, maybe not exactly VR, but they wanted some sort of more like a way to play your games that feels more, you feel more close. You feel like you're in the game,
And
right?
you know what's actually funny too is it wasn't even the first time that Nintendo had worked with 3D image technology on your television, because way back in the day they created a headset for the Famicom. Right?
Yeah.
If you actually want to know more about that, I highly encourage you guys to go to a website or a YouTube channel. My Life in Gaming, we're big friends of those guys. They make an amazing show, and they actually did a really cool video talking about that and showing how it worked. I honestly think the best that anyone has ever done on YouTube. Now, that's what Nintendo's done in the past. What we're talking about today, though, is the modern implementation of what virtual reality would be. So, as you may know, there's a lot of people in the market right now. There's the HTC Vive, there's the PlayStation VR, there's the Oculus Rift. There's actually an open VR standard that isn't really making waves, but it does exist. And most recently, we started to get a lot more word out there from a thing called Magic Leap, which Magic Leap is kind of this thing that's been rumored to be amazing, and now what we see is just like kind of a...
It's more augmented reality, like the Microsoft headset as well.
Exactly. There's also the Microsoft Mixed Reality headset, which we've actually taken a look at before, I believe actually on this channel too. There's a lot of stuff out there that people are trying to get into VR. The idea is whoever gets into VR the best, gets the most audience there, is going to win. Right now, the biggest supporter for VR has been in cell phone markets, because you see more people owning cell phones, and they're more likely to just buy a
Gear VR
Gear
type
VR
system.
or a Google Daydream, that kind of stuff. So VR is a really big thing. I'm pretty well versed in it. I've used a lot of headsets now, and I like some elements of it. My favorite experience so far is HTC Vive, despite the fact that it kind of drags you down because of all the wires you have to wear, but the experience is really good. That being said, what this would possibly be, and I imagine this is what's going on. I don't know if this is related to the NVIDIA architecture that they have in there, that maybe this is some kind of layover from the technology or something like that.
It could be, because that was a chip that was integrated into cell phones, right? But this slightly augmented, was it?
Well, I mean...
it was the Tegra X1 chip.
It's not the exact same chip as far as we're to understand,
right.
But what I'm seeing here, especially with the idea that we're seeing a split screen on the actual
the unit itself.
The Switch itself. Yes. Okay, so what this split screen means, for those of you that don't know, is that when you put on a specific headset, there'll be these like kind of lenses on it that kind of warp the image a little bit.
Warp and magnify, in a sense.
Now, what's going to happen is when you look at a screen that's been split down the center, you get a kind of a stereoscopic image. That means a duplicated image on the left and right that's slightly offset, and that creates the idea that you're looking at something in 3D, which is typically how your eyes actually work when you look around in the real world. Now, with that being said, Every single high VR set I've used has featured a higher resolution
That's right.
or an increased frame rate.
Do you want me to do the resolution dance right
Go right
now?
ahead,
Okay,
yeah.
so the Rift and the HTC Vive are in at 2160 by 1200, so that's 1080 by 1200 per eye.
Yes.
All right. When you take that into consideration with another unit like the Switch, the screen is only 1280 by 720, which is already that's not even splitting the screen in half.
That's the whole screen.
Yeah, that's already quite. The resolution is going to be quite low
Yes.
compared to the competitors. The PSVR is 1080 by 960, which is slightly lower than the Rift or the Vive. It was more like their test units along those same
That's
lines.
true,
So when you have a low resolution in VR, you get something called the screen door effect, where you can kind of see where the pixels end, and there's a bit of like a black space.
Pretty much just walk really close to your TV or your screen right now and look really, really close, and that's what it looks like.
You're going to hurt your eyes, don't do that.
Yeah,
But trust us.
Yeah, that's basically how it works. You can see the pixels.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that is really important is there's this idea of ghosting. If the frame rate isn't high enough, you can actually get a little bit of motion sickness because when you're looking around, your movement isn't matching up with what you see.
Right.
Now, the higher the frame rate, the better. But what I've noticed at least, is 90 frames per second tends to be the place that looks the best for me.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the big players in VR right now are trying to shoot for 120 eventually. I think that's like the perfect place to be. But yeah, 90 frames per second seems to be where everyone's at. But unfortunately, I don't believe the Switch could possibly do that.
No,
At most,
yeah.
so it's like 60 frames per second.
Unfortunately, the screen on the Switch is 60 hertz, so it's not going to be able to go as high as we need it to go. So there's basically two problems with this. One, the resolution being so small means it's going to look really, really bad, and then the actual frame rate being so low means it's probably not going to work out that well. So, with that in mind, if you were to have something like this be released on the Switch, I don't believe using the Switch's current screen would make sense.
Right.
If they were to make another version of the Switch, and this is a conversation we should be having about, there's been rumors that Nintendo wants to do a revision. There's this idea that the revision would happen, but when it would happen, it would probably happen somewhere around 2020 to combat the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox 2.
We have had so many revised consoles from Nintendo, not necessarily the home consoles themselves, but the handhelds. We've had the DSi, the new 3DS systems. I could see that happening. To me, when I read about this news, Nintendo, they have a historically they have a habit of tossing everything against the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
And this just seems like something that was a layover from producing the console itself. I don't think this is to be taken extremely seriously.
I completely agree, yeah.
Yeah, but I like to imagine what could be a Nintendo VR experience.
Yes, because
that's really fun.
See, one of the biggest problems we have with virtual reality is that everyone that's trying to get into the game sucks at making software besides one company, and that's Valve. Valve has made a lot of really exciting software and experiences using the HTC Vive, and we've seen a lot of support on Steam that has actually been pretty good. Oculus has attempted to make VR games in-house, and they've worked with a lot of people to have exclusives on the platform, but none of them have really grabbed a lot of people's attention.
Yeah, it seemed like ever since the Facebook acquisition of Oculus, things kind of, because they went from a company that was like, no, VR's for everyone, it's going to be open, and Vive took that sort of stance, and Oculus seemed to wall itself off a bit more. So,
and actually Sony too, right? Because Sony for PlayStation VR.
Yeah.
But an issue with that too is that Sony has made a lot of PlayStation VR things. And by the way, when it comes to commercialized PlayStation or VR,
the console VR,
they are the best. I mean,
they're almost the only, only one.
But when it comes to their system, you get a PlayStation 4, you get a headset, you bring it home, easy to set up, done, you're playing, right? Yep. That's something that you don't get with the other headsets on the market that are, unless they're just a standalone headset by themselves, that are have a limited kind of experience. So when it comes to what Sony's doing with their system, it makes the most sense there. But the games they've made have had a mixed reception. Some have been really interesting experiences, but then others have not been.
Like we said, their hardware was on sort of the lower end of what hardware is available for VR, as far as like beefier VR. That's not like gear, putting your cell phone into like a plastic unit. And we've seen like the screen door effect. We've seen some problems, like you said, with ghosting and whatnot. And then taking that into consideration and thinking about something like the Switch integrating VR into it, it doesn't feel that great.
Yeah.
Right?
I think like a kind of an interesting thing to think about when it comes to PlayStation VR 2 is that one of the really cool things about that headset is that it feels so good to put it on your head. It's amazing because most of these headsets are very structured and are very difficult to put on, but this one it just glides in.
Okay.
It's easy to use, and then the screen itself, really nice looking. Like that's something that you don't typically see with a lot of these VR headsets. HTC Vive now has a newer version of the headset. It costs a lot more. There's some conflicts with that.
Right.
But honestly, I just don't believe that Nintendo is going to do something like this.
No, I don't. Like I said, I believe this was a leftover from like when they were first coding things. Oh, maybe there could be VR integration, or maybe they're thinking about integrating things later on along the line for the system. Because we've seen this in the past with not just Nintendo, other systems where you have physically things built into the system for other upgrades and things that never actually come out. This is just kind of a software version of that.
Now, when it comes to these other companies having produced all this stuff, right? Nintendo's one of those companies that could literally make use of any kind of hardware and make it work for them, right? I have no doubt in my mind that they could make games using this, but I don't believe they would be an experience that is worthy of the Nintendo moniker.
Right.
But with that in mind, if they were to do this, the way I think they would do it is they would make a standalone headset that simply just had a screen in it, maybe some other kinds of sensors, possibly some kind of, what they're called lighthouses, but they're basically sensors that you put on either side of the room to kind of triangulate your position. If they did something like that, right, where it's just a bare bones experience, and then the processing and all that stuff is done by the Switch itself by docking into the headset, I think you could have something that could really be a cool experience.
Just talking about that, it seems a bit messy, but that does seem like one of the better ways to get a good experience, a good VR experience. Just thinking about the headset itself, you were talking about putting things on your head. The Switch, just the screen itself, is pretty heavy compared to the screens of the competitors.
Yeah.
So if we were to imagine just the Switch as it is right now being integrated into VR in the way that we've seen, like the screens that you put into the cell phone holders, it's going to be quite heavy, quite bulky. At first, when I started thinking about this, I was like, would there be some sort of a Labo unit that you'd make out of cardboard, put the Switch screen in, and then you have straps and you put it on your head? That would still be pretty weighty.
You know, how the battery life, right? How would that work? The way you control the world, how would that work? Do you need specific controls for this? This is an issue because when you're in VR, typically you need some kind of motion-based control scheme. Now, while those the Joy-Cons are capable of doing some kind of motion implementation, the actual structure of where they are in free space, that can't be identified because those devices don't have any kind of sensors on them that you would typically see on HTC Vive or the Oculus Rift controllers.
There is a lot of tech in those controllers, but not tech specifically tailored for VR. I don't doubt that Nintendo could come up with something for those, though, because there's so many things that you can do with those things. Okay, so we talked a lot about like the VR unit, the physicality of it, and the specs and things. Do you think this is going to happen?
I just don't think so. I don't think that Nintendo's going to want to do this. The Switch is already a very interesting multi-use system, and to add an additional use to it may confuse the end consumer, and I don't think they need that VR ability on the Switch to make it successful. We're seeing a lot of people buy it. There's a lot of really interesting games on there, and they're struggling right now to get games out. The idea that they would be making games specifically for a VR platform
doesn't seem the greatest.
Yeah, it would hurt them further, I think.
And I think there's still, even if it's a tiny, tiny scar, I think there's still a little bit of a virtual voice scar somewhere in there.
I think so.
That keeps things at bay a bit. Okay, all that being said, I want to talk really quick, just to wrap things up. Okay, let's say they did make this.
Okay.
Let's say it was fantastic. There's a new screen. It's even better than the Vive and the Rift. What games?
Okay, this is stuff I've been thinking about for a while. What games would you want on this? So right off the top, I would love to see Mario Kart on this. I know that motion, when you're playing these kind of games, would make you kind of sick. So I want a Mario Kart where you look above and it's like a racetrack, and you're looking down at it, and it's like a little track racer thing. I think that would be really fun.
Sorry to cut you off. Maybe kind of in the same vein as off-road.
Yes,
right?
exactly like that.
You got that
exactly.
Thing? Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be really fun, right?
An idea that popped into my head. Like first, I was like, "Oh, Metroid Prime," which would be great, right? You'd be Samus. That'd be really cool, seeing through the visor. But my next sort of leap was like, wait a sec. 3D Mario Maker.
Yeah, you could do that.
Dude,
easily,
you
right?
can you can look all over the screen. Maybe that's only implemented in the creation process.
You know,
like,
the,
it would make creating things so easy.
There's
right?
that new Samus game on the 3DS, the 2D one.
Yeah,
I would
Samus Returns.
I would love to see that, kind of like a dollhouse effect, where you're looking at the world from the side and kind of looking into it kind of thing, right?
Speaking of dollhouses, Paper Mario.
Okay, easy.
Dude!
Yes, yeah, right, it's basically made for it, right?
Yeah,
You just stare down
You'd
at a
have,
world.
like, what are those called? Shoebox dioramas?
Yeah.
And there was VR integration with Dolphin,
Yes.
the emulator. They showed off Paper Mario in that. That's one of the most impressive games I've seen with Dolphin in VR.
I would say typically any 2D experience that you've seen from Nintendo could easily work in this experience. And plus, Nintendo has already had 3D related games released on the 3DS that could be brought over for this experience. That includes The Legend of Zelda. Now, another thing I would like to see too, Captain Toad.
Dude, I have that written down here.
Yeah, okay, yeah, Captain Toad, seriously?
It's perfect.
It really is,
Yeah.
because you look around the puzzle so that you can solve it. I think that's really a really cool way to do that.
And yeah, not only are you looking around the puzzle, but the puzzles are made in such a way that they are little pieces already.
Exactly,
Right? So
yeah.
sometimes in VR, you have problems with like the expanse beyond, but Captain Toad's already just a nugget of a level.
Super Mario 3D Land. That was one of my favorite Super Mario games.
The 3DS title.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like that. I don't really complete games 100%. I try to get as close as I can to them, and I have a lot of fun with them. But that game, I just had to complete it all the way through. I love that so much. It was such a great game to play. That with a VR headset, I would go nuts. I'd love that.
I got one more.
Okay.
Then I guess I'll wrap things up on my end. Advance Wars.
Yes.
Bring it back. You got the map in front of you, and you can use your Joy-Con or whatever controller to like physically move your little units around.
100%.
Oh my gosh!
Oh yeah, that would be amazing,
Dude,
right?
it'd be like that RTS map style.
Tabletop General, right? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like that idea there. I mean, there are so many vintage and classic Nintendo IPs that would be great for this, but I don't even think it would stop there. When you're considering that you have an enhanced frame rate of 90 frames per second, if they were to do something like that, or even maybe if they were to be the first ones to get to 120.
120, yeah.
Yeah, 120 frame per second Smash Brothers Ultimate VR experience. You sit there, you watch the world as it goes in front of you. That would be a crazy fun experience.
The more we're having this conversation, the more I'm realizing that a lot of these games would work so well because a lot of them are diorama style.
Yes, right?
Smash Brothers, Captain Toad,
Exactly.
Paper Mario, Advance
Exactly.
Wars could be.
Because right now you're seeing a lot of these folks out there that are trying to make VR experiences or trying to do the first-person implementation, which, yeah, you can do that. That's fine. But when you're thinking about the way that this would work in a different experience, like right now, everyone is freaking out about that new Tetris game. Tetris...
Oh, geez, you're going to put me on the spot.
See, I forgot the name of the Tetris game, too.
Hatris, I believe it's called.
Hatris?
Hatris.
Hatris? Not Hatris.
Hatris was like the second game created by...
Tetris Effect. Our camera girl at the back there just told us.
Hey, idiots!
Yeah, Tetris Effect. Tetris Effect is an amazing experience from what everyone's telling us, because it is a 2D experience that plays with the concept of dimension by having effects kind of come out at you as you're playing.
Well, Shane, what if I told you you could already play a 3D Tetris game on a Nintendo platform in black and red? Would you be excited?
No! So, folks, what do you think about this all
There's
stuff?
two.
I know.
There's two Tetris games for the Virtual Boy and a Bomberman Tetris game.
There is a
I gotta bring
Bomberman.
in my Virtual Boy,
You
man.
really you should leave it home. Anyway,
Hey, what Virtual Boy games do you want on the Virtual Boy? Let us know.
actually, you know what? Before we end, I'm being serious. All the Virtual Boy games recolored brought to this system, right? I mean, I was expecting them to do that with a 3DS already. I was expecting them to have
should've.
those games. There was, look, I know it's fun to knock on the Virtual Boy and make fun of it. There's a lot of really good games on that platform that are really fun to play.
Shane's trying to make me feel good.
I'm being serious. I bought a Virtual Boy specifically to play certain games on it, and I'm going to tell you my story. Everyone else, you can turn off the video now. The first time I was ever really embarrassed by playing video games, I was a young kid, chubby. Went to a video game store.
Wait, did you? Okay, never mind. No, go ahead.
I went to a video game store. Okay.
Chubby's a dangerous word.
I was overweight. I will say this when I was a kid. I went to the store and the Virtual Boy how it was just being shown off, and they had this kiosk. I looked at it like it was this amazing thing from the future. oh, it's a game system that you look into and you see a different world. I was so crazed. I had to try this out. So I went in there. Now here's the thing, when you go into a virtual reality space, you lose track of time because you can't see the world around you. So time goes by, you might say a little bit faster, but it takes up a lot of your free-form thoughts and vision from everywhere else. When I looked in that machine, I got stuck in playing, I forget, it was either tennis or something like that.
I can name all the games right now.
I happened to have a ponytail at this point in time.
You're a chubby kid with a ponytail.
It wasn't good. I'm just saying. So what happened was, while I was playing the Virtual Boy, one of the people, I was just in there for the whole time. I don't know if anyone was lining up behind me. But then the guy that was running the store came up to me and he tapped me on the shoulder and I pulled my head out and as he looked at my face, he went, "Little girl, it's time to stop playing the Virtual Boy.
Oh my god.
And let someone else have a turn."
Oh my gosh.
I never played the Virtual Boy again for years.
I don't want to bring mine in now. I feel like you're gonna have PTSD.
I've got it after the
fetal
fact.
Position on the ground.
After that happened, it made me feel like at the time it was like the 90s, and I was already self-conscious about how I looked.
You know, if I bring that in, I'm gonna tap on your shoulder and say, "Little girl,"
and I will punch you in the throat. So, folks, what do you think about virtual reality on the Switch?
This is the fourth time we've ended this video, Shane.
What do you think about virtual reality on the Switch? Do you think it's going to be a cool idea? Do you think it's going to be something that people are going to want to get into? Or do you think that Nintendo's not going to go this route and keep on driving the Switch the way it's been going? Let us know what you think.